You're going to be hearing today from fathers and mothers, from feminists and libertarians, from transgender and detransitioned individuals, child protection advocates and parental rights advocates, pastors and politicians, coaches and doctors, epidemiologists and researchers, students and school trustees. There are a lot of different backgrounds being represented, but we are coming together for one purpose, and that's to protect youth. I want to open with a very brief statement by Dr. Will Malone. Dr. Will Malone is an endocrinologist who was part of the founding of SEGM, the Society for Evidence-Based Gender Medicine. And he stated to me over Twitter that we are the first group of organized clinicians who are telling the truth. Psychotherapy should be the first line for children, adolescents, and young adults with gender dysphoria, because there's no convincing evidence that hormones or surgery will improve their mental health. He pointed to the recent NICE statement out of the UK that hormones and surgery are experimental, unproven interventions, and the UK is currently clawing back what has been done. SEGM says this: the history of medicine has many examples in which the well-meaning pursuit of short-term relief of symptoms has led to devastating long-term results.
There are not enough of us standing up and speaking out about this issue, so it's critical that those of us who are learn to work together. This fight is bigger than political grievances between those who fancy themselves leftists versus anyone who is to the right of them on the political spectrum. This is about the mental health and bodily integrity of children and youth who are being given unproven, harmful medical treatments that most are not capable of consenting to. It is about lies and regressive sex stereotypes being taught to our children under the guise of progressivism and inclusivity in BC's public schools.
Is when I was speaking with Evan Solomon on CTV, and he asked me what I thought about Bill C-16. And I said, well, I would repeal that bill. And it was in the context of an interview that was actually controversial on many other points. But having said just that, I got probably 200 emails from feminist organizations across the country who were saying, Derek, who are you? What is this all about? And I had the support of all of these different groups of people, which I would never have thought possible. And that is the interesting thing about this particular issue. It brings so many different people together. People of different backgrounds, people of different faiths, people who recognize that it is important for us to call a spade and to speak the truth. It's not about left, it's not about right, it's about the truth. It's about our kids, and it's about protecting those most vulnerable.
At the time that number was released, the province of BC had about somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 kids in their care. So when I did the math, I found out that 7.7% of all children in government care were identifying as transgender and under the care of one doctor. 7.7% of all children in care, if the numbers that he has released are correct. Now that's just one doctor. There are other doctors out there. The number may be as high as 1 in 10. Wow. Compare that to the regular population for transgender, which is estimated to be about 1 in 200. That is startling. And this is one of the reasons I've been calling for provincial and national inquiries on this immediately, because these are extraordinarily vulnerable kids who are being preyed upon.
I have served public education for 25 years and I believed in it. But these last 3 years have shaken my faith in public education. If the ministry will not re-examine SOGI 123, I will warn parents to take their children out of public education system before activist teachers destroy young bodies with drugs and destroy families by turning children against parents.
We are seeing the enormous consequences of this deception. To not acknowledge biological sex as a material reality results in male rapists being placed in women's prisons, male bodies being admitted into women's sports, and yes, children being convinced by the SOGI 123 curriculum in our schools and on social media that their future biological well-being means nothing. Gender identity is the shiny new dogma that seeks to devour and destroy young Canadian bodies on the altar of a temporary and fluid state of mind that is being incessantly promoted by adults who should know better. Parents and therapists alike are discouraged from exploring alternative options to the destructive affirmation of this deception. They are not allowed to consider the coexisting fact of biological sex and the permanent physical devastation that results from a child entering the medical pathway unnecessarily.
I grew up in an environment where I was rarely reminded of my gender. I could go as far to say I grew up in blissful ignorance of this, that I lived as myself and myself only. I was the sort of girl who wanted to learn ballet and martial arts in the same breath. I was fascinated with science. I would go on to be a part of a science research club for 6 years in my teenagehood and dream of becoming a neurosurgeon. All this, and no one really stopped me because I was a girl or anything. I would do this. I took emotional interest in World War II as a Japanese Canadian. What I mean to say is this. I didn't fit in to a normal category of girl, but it was still okay.
When they say affirmation, they mean rejecting the body of a child was born in and embarking on a path of puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, multiple surgeries, and a lifetime of medication and dire consequences, such as sterility and loss of sexual function. Something that 99% of kids will do if started on puberty blockers. There is a whole industry developing around the conversion of kids, and it is being encouraged through the influence of gender activists on social media and even in our schools. Yes, that is the real conversion here, that is endorsed and supported by this bill. The LGB Canada report, which I implore you to read, speaks of lesbians and gays saying to each other in whispered conversations, "Thank God, I'm not a gay kid growing up right now. If I had been, there's no question that I would have identified as transgender and been sent for sexual reassignment."
Anyways, I'm also an epidemiologist and worked for many years at the University of California, San Francisco, UCSF. I managed the Cochrane Review Group on HIV/AIDS for about 15 years. So I've got pretty good skills in the area of evidence-based research methodologies. My expertise is in analyzing the methods and outcomes of scientific research studies and finding different kinds of bias and design flaws that may undermine the supposed findings and conclusions of these studies. This gives me a good foundation for examining the trans research evidence to see what's really going on. Well, what is really going on is one of the largest and most blatant gaslighting exercises the world has ever known.
And I want to especially talk to the professionals. I want to talk to the psychologists, to the psychiatrists, to the psychotherapists. I was one for 25 years. I retired so I could become a voice in this place across Canada. And I want to say to the medical professionals, we have a problem of ethics. Yes. We have a problem of being professional. You have stopped practicing what you were trained to practice. Psychotherapists, you have stopped practicing and you are not telling people the truth. You're not telling the parents the truth. You're not telling the children the truth. This is absolutely malpractice.
I'm very pleased to be with you today because we are sharing the same principles. And as a father of two daughters, 22 years old and 19 years old, I cannot understand what is happening in our country here with all these restrictions and the violation of our parental rights. We need to fight, and that's what we are doing here today.
Can we give a big shout out to all of our speakers today speaking against child medical transition? Thank you for all of you for coming. This is phenomenal. I mean, there's at least 500 people here. This is amazing. Thank you for lending your voice. My hope is that we go away from this willing to speak to our friends, speak on social media, speak to our neighbors, speak to our co-workers about what's going on in our country and how vulnerable children are being harmed and how there's a father in jail who is trying to protect his child. And so we need everybody to be standing up and speaking out on this, and we thank you for your support.